Should we go? Is Rex not coming? He usually comes.
I know, I've heard from him.
Okay. Ready? All right, let's call to order City of Coos Bay Planning Commission meeting for Tuesday, July 12th. Call to order for attendance.
Alrighty. Commissioner Terry.
Here.
Commissioner Merriam. Commissioner Berg. Commissioner Geary.
Here.
Commissioner Davis.
Here.
Commissioner Stevens.
Here.
Commissioner Miller.
Perfect, thank you. Tonight's, we've got a public hearing for item A, B, and C, amendments to the Coos Bay Municipal Code, Chapter 17.150, definition of development and modification of tables 17.220.030, related to the allowance of multi-dwelling units on lots larger than 7,500 square feet. Did you want to do a staff report?
Yes.
Yeah. Also, at the beginning, so item A and C are the same. One's just more of a bullet pointed version. A is a little bit longer, C is more streamlined.
Yeah, we had some challenges with our system.
Yes.
Something that was supposed to be a draft it was retained. So anyway, it's all about the information. There's two things we're going to talk about here tonight. One is the fact that our development code does not have a definition of, quote, development. And that can be problematic sometimes when we tell people they need land use permits and the code talks about development on this and development on that, and I go to look it up and there's no definition. So this is a definition that we would like to suggest to you. We would then go on to council with an ordinance to amend the code to add this definition. We think it's pretty comprehensive. I've included it, I've seen it included in other codes, something similar to this. I've seen definitions that are much more detailed than this, but I think this might be a good fit for Coos Bay in our development code. So people will know when we talk about development what that means. Do you want to talk about that for a little bit? And
Sure, we could break it down a little bit. The
okay.
development definition's pretty broad. I think it covers all angles too. Did you guys have any thoughts on it?
I thought it looked good.
Yeah, I
Okay.
thought it looked good too.
All right. The second piece of this is a little more, I'll call it interesting. A little more interesting. In our zoning districts, the single small lot residential and low density residential, we have a minimum lot size of I'm sorry, a maximum lot size of 7,500 square feet. Now, when somebody comes in one of these districts and they want to build a single family home, that's fine. I mean, usually it'll fit in, it'll work. But what's also allowed in these districts is multifamily development. And so if somebody comes in and they have been lucky enough to find, say, I don't know, an acre that's not been subdivided, they're going to come to the counter and they're going to say, we want to do this cottage cluster, or we want to do this multifamily because we know it's allowed there up to a certain density. And we're going to have to tell them, well, I'm sorry, the maximum lot size here is 7,500 square feet. And I think in the case of actually, it's 10,000 square feet in the low-density residential and 7,500 square feet in the small lot residential, okay? So whether or not you're in one zone or the other, if you come in and you have an acre lot and you want to develop multifamily, we're going to have to tell you, well, I'm sorry, the maximum lot size here is 7,500 square feet or 10,000 square feet. So what you're going to have to do is take that acre and you're going to have to subdivide it. And now you can begin to put your units on. It's an extra step But if you're going to end up with the same product anyway, why go have folks go through that exercise? Which is why what we're suggesting is that you keep that maximum for your single families, but for your multifamily development, you take it away. You don't have a maximum for multifamily. That way somebody can come in on any size large lot and they can go through the permitting process for a multifamily. And a lot of times those are not condominiums or anything. People want to do apartments. So we're suggesting that as an amendment for you to consider. They could still make it happen. It's a matter of cutting the process down to do that. And by the process, I don't just mean our time, but I mean their money as well. I mean, Amy, you can probably attest to any of your clients that say, well, I have to subdivide it, I have to do this, and I have to pay an engineer, and I have to da-da-da-da-da. But then if they come back then and they end up with the same product anyway, why make them go through that? So we wanted to put that out there, and we actually had a case like this, where we had to tell somebody that, and it was, with all the work that the council's been doing on trying to make the creation of housing easier, it just seemed appropriate to bring this forward. And I think, Amy, we gave you a copy of the map in color. The salmon and the gold shows you the areas that we're talking about. So, I mean, it's quite a bit of property. I didn't pull up square footages and acres of vacant land, but there are vacant properties out there, and this seems like a small thing to do to make it easier for folks to be able to develop multifamily in these districts. Do you have any questions about that?
On properties zoned for multifamily, correct?
Yeah, you can do multifamily in those districts.
And so like during, if somebody's putting in a subdivision, there's all the requirements for streets and sidewalks and all this other type of stuff.
That still applies.
That would still apply in this situation. They'd have to, they just couldn't have an apartment out there in the middle of the.
Yeah, no,
movies
exactly.
without a street to it. Or
Exactly.
gravel road or something like that.
Yeah, any kind of development, multifamily has its own unique set of requirements, both out of the building code and engineering as well. But, sewer, water, whether there's this invisible line on a piece of paper that says it's a subdivision, condo, or it's apartments, still have the same issues.
Do you know how many properties it affects? Because it doesn't seem like that big of a zone.
Well, if you look at,
I mean, Inglewood looks like they've got some pieces east side too.
but it applies all over. I mean, because you can also do these in both of those districts, so. I didn't pull up the numbers.
I wasn't sure like how many were actually zoned for multifamily that were in these density zones.
I couldn't tell you exactly how many. I could go back and pull, I could talk to my GIS manager and identify all the lots that are over 7,500 square feet, but by virtue of the fact that we had just one,
Right.
it was like, we need to do something. So,
Is there I always try and come up with a argument against stuff just as a contrarian by nature, but I can't, this seems appropriate to me. I think anything we can do to ease that development burden, I think, is a blessing. Is there anyone think of anything that why we shouldn't move forward with this recommendation to council, or what do you need from the commission at this
just a
point?
recommendation. The council has to make the decision. And so if you don't provide a recommendation, I'll drop this. If you do provide a recommendation for them to approve, then I'll create a set of findings. And one of the things that I gave you was this, it was out of the plan amendment section of the code. You can see the different findings that I would have to make under the approval criteria. And there's like 5, 7 of them, and I have to go through this kind of long narrative, and I'm like, I like to save that for the council. You know, I guess I could have done it for you guys, but I feel like as long as you got the basic concept and can give me a green or a red light, then I can proceed.
Do we need to vote on, do we need?
Yes,
Yeah,
but it is a
the
public
motion.
hearing.
Yeah, I was
so-
trying to think of a devil's advocate thing too, and I
Yeah.
couldn't come up with
Yeah.
anything either.
So you do need an official motion?
I need a motion to recommend, but it is a public hearing, so you're going to want to open the public hearing.
Sure.
So,
Okay.
Are you all done with your report?
with that,
Okay. I'll open the public hearing. Did you have any matters on this? Hearing none, then we'll need a motion.
you don't want to close.
Oh, close the public hearing, then we'll need
Okay,
a motion.
thank you.
I'll make the motion. We recommend the changes proposed to the city council.
Okay,
Oh, second.
Roll call for all in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so moving to item B. Okay.
this was continued from the meeting that you had on, in June, and you had asked how the guidelines could be framed to allow construction of a new building when it wasn't really feasible to retain an old building. And we came up with some language on what you could include and how that would be made possible. However, after your meeting, 2 weeks after your meeting, the city council provided some direction that action on this be held off. And they are looking towards creating a master plan for the entire Empire area. So what you're compelled to do, because you did continue the public hearing, is open the public hearing and accept testimony, and then you can close the public hearing and then have your discussion. I'm recommending that you entirely table this whole discussion until council's ready to move forward with their master plan. Because these design guidelines discussions would all be inside the master plan. But you really must have a public hearing because you continued it. So, but once it's closed and you make a motion to table, you're good. If that's what you do, which you probably should.
If your advice is to do nothing, I like
Yep.
You should probably follow the council's.
And you said they're doing a master plan for the entire Empire District?
I'm not sure.
Oh, okay.
Someone else is working on the scope for that, so.
Okay. All right, well then we'll open the public hearing. Jim, did you?
I'm tepidly in favor of the changes that have already been presented, and it's tepid, very lukewarm. My friends that live in the Empire District that this applies to are the people that jump through the hoops to meet the criteria that's on here. And I'd like you, as you think about Empire, to think about downtown Coos Bay. Downtown Empire, downtown Coos Bay, both in urban renewal districts, both with a very eclectic mix of architecture, no real continuity, okay? And to go even farther, the significant portion of the historical buildings, the buildings over 100 years old in the Empire District, aren't in that historical overlay where these rules would apply. So if you were trying to make something more uniform and trying to build a district, you would build it on the foundation of the already existing 1800 to early 1900 buildings, of which nearly none of them, except for the Tower House, are in this overlay. So I'm tepidly interested in the changes and think they're fairly positive. In reality, whatever applies to downtown Coos Bay should apply out there. There should not be an extra step because you're in Empire. So if I want to put up a sign, the sign ordinance that applies in Coos Bay downtown should apply to me in Empire. I shouldn't have limitations on flashing lights, sizes, color palettes. If I want to paint my building down there, or reside my building. I shouldn't have any sort of extra steps other than the same steps that the guys at Home Bay Appliance take in the urban renewal district to paint their building. Nothing extra. I feel that this particular district was a detriment to improvements in the Empire District. People did not spend because they didn't want to take the extra steps and spend the extra 3 weeks, depending on when the committee that approves the changes meets. All right, 3 weeks added to whatever project you were going to do to get it approved, which is something you don't have to do downtown or anywhere else, really. There are some other overlays, but generally speaking, what applies to downtown Coos Bay, they're both urban renewal districts, should apply to Empire. And there shouldn't be any appreciable difference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I offer just a little notation?
Absolutely.
Just by way of kind of context, the downtown now has wrapped in the waterfront area on Front Street. That area does have design guidelines.
Absolutely.
And so you have like this kind of, the baby's kind of split in the areas where, I think they called it the 5x5 around these. They don't have guidelines, but the Waterfront Heritage District does. That's where I understand there was a little bit of controversy because when Coos Bay Village came in, they, the design assistance team, the guidelines said, well, you need to follow these, and the decision was made ultimately that that wasn't necessary. So that's kind of an interesting point, and I'm sure that'll all be fleshed out when they talk about the master plan.
Didn't the Front Street Heritage District follow the guidelines though? Because I remember there were multiple things across our desk,
Some of them, yeah.
like with lighting and signage
Right.
and,
Yes, but that's different than private property development.
okay.
And there's guidelines in that section about, retaining character and all of that. The other thing that is kind of interesting about this Empire draft that you looked at last time was that when this went to the design assistance team, the original that went to them suggested, and I'm echoing the comment here, was suggesting that it go all the way to the city limits down Empire Boulevard because that's where all these older structures were. But that was rejected. They really didn't want to go that route. They felt like just changing it was going to be difficult enough. And so, there's some challenges here. So I think that it would be really logical if when they do the master plan, they talk about those boundaries, not only down Empire, but all along the waterfront down there. I mean, the opportunities adjacent to Hollering Place are, and the property north of that, right now, a lot of that's in an estuary area where there are absolutely no development standards whatsoever. So if someone came in and wanted to put in a grain silo 90 feet tall, there's nothing in our code that would preclude them from doing that. It's pretty interesting. Well, if code writing interests you, I'm looking at you, Josh, my fellow planner up here. So anyway, though, I just wanted to share those comments.
Sure.
Thank you. And retain my recommendation that you table this.
Any additional public comment? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. How about discussion amongst ourselves? I guess I do like to have an overlay in the heart of specific areas, just so certain areas are built up a specific way and they draw in because of the characters that that people are trying to preserve. I don't necessarily like large overlays, but I do think, especially waterfront areas, the heart of Empire, where thousands and thousands of people drive by, it'd be ideal to have some conformity there, but I don't like to put any rules on actually rehabbing old buildings. That's something that I really wish our area did more of, but those are just my thoughts.
That's that balancing act, isn't it? Of, wanting that cohesiveness, but not wanting to encumber.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around what's the historical for that corridor. What is the historical? Yeah,
The current regulations reference some kind of an assemblage of pictures that I can't find them from the 1800s. That was, and excuse me if I'm wrong and somebody watches this and I'm incorrect, it's very likely that I am, but this whole discussion happened many, many years ago. And so when I see that reference, I'm like, well, where can I find this? Well, it's not readily available. So it makes it a little hard for folks. And I think that what you came up with, especially how it was tweaked after your last time, that if you want to build from scratch, you need to take something down because it's just not safe anymore, then pick a style, but do it well, So I'm hopeful that when you are questioned about the master plan, you'll remember these conversations and this last draft, and were you to expand the boundary and maybe add a little more language to your liking, maybe that would be of interest to council, ultimately.
It's not like we get that question when we're walking down the street or anything.
Well, that's true, but you are in a position that when the city is looking vision, long
Yeah.
range, you are in the position to make recommendations to your council, and that's part of why you were all selected, because, you have a real interest in this. So, maybe tuck this under your welcome mat at home or something, and if it comes up again, you'll have a little bit of reference to say, we did start to look at this. So, anyway, thanks.
Any other discussion?
I have a question, and this is completely off any of these topics, but I've noticed a ton of motorhome and travel trailer traffic going up Elrod this spring and summer compared to previous, and I'm wondering if rather than routing people out to Sunset Bay up Newmark, people are following Google and taking that
Libby? Taking Libby out to the
No,
coast?
going straight up Elrod,
Oh.
like at Tower Ford and going up down past Blossom Gulch and that tight,
Yeah.
Just the other day I saw a big motor coach with a enclosed trailer behind it. And I know all that signage, that's on 101, that would fall under ODOT, correct?
Yes, but we do have agreements with them on what can go on those signs.
Oh,
The guy you want to call, I'll give you his name after the meeting,
okay,
because, I think he'd be interested in hearing about this.
okay.
Because if it's intrusive into a neighborhood that's, where there's a better way to go, Google can take you at all kinds of places.
Yeah, and it seemed really,
That's right.
yeah.
so my house, if you go to the very end of Elrod, where it terminates and go up the hill, that's where I live.
Right.
And Google shows Elrod is going all the way through the water board project.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I see people go up my driveway and I'm sitting out there in the back
Wow.
and looking around going,
Yeah.
there's nowhere to turn around. It's
Right.
Sunsner's driveway or something like
Yeah.
that, and then come back down. There was a big motorhome the other day that tries to do that. Anyway, yeah.
That's probably what's happening, yeah.
Well, yeah, because I can see it on my map, and there's the only people that use that road are the homeless right now, so maybe the water.
No.
board.
Okay.
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 Thanks for getting off topic.
Are we voting on recommendations?
Do we need to move a
or-
motion to table that?
We do.
I move to table agenda item 3B until a later date after city council decides what they want to do with the master plan.
Okay.
Make it a
A
second.
second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Any additional public comment? Any additional commissioner comments? I had a quick question on Airbnbs. Probably not the best comment to have while you're here. So if there's a duplex, and there's already an Airbnb in the unit, is there any way around allowing an additional Airbnb if they had approval within their HOA in that multifamily? I shouldn't have said duplex, I meant multifamily. Condos.
The city doesn't honor homeowner association restrictions. We only enforce our own rules.
Right,
So
but with
it would
the,
turn into a situation where they'd have to, go to their HOA. Now, I don't quite know how that would be handled if it was already existing before our rules went into effect. I don't know that you could add one on the other side of the unit.
so the distance requirement is strict and there's no variance around?
Nobody's asked.
Okay,
but
so you
I-
can ask though?
Oh, you can ask for anything,
Okay,
but,
that's what I thought, I was wondering.
if I were the director, I would punt that request up to the planning commission for discussion. That's yeah,
Okay,
there's not a precedent on that at this point,
okay,
so,
all right, thank you.
sure, no problem.
Amy, before you shut down, I do have a comment.
Uh-oh,
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Carolyn and staff have did a remarkable job to date with the short-term vacation rental issue. We had a investor from Monterey, California, come in and try to blow through the system. They recommended a withdrawal. They've withdrawn their application. We have two out there pending that I think are from Portland investors that I haven't seen an approval on. Those investors spoke at the meeting. And then on our 300 feet separation, that was done for a reason. Okay, neighborhoods are significantly important to this community, all right?
Yeah, I was just asking a question. We
I
can't
know.
have a debate about it, sorry.
Okay, I don't mean to till new ground or till old ground.
Oh, no, it's okay.
Just so you guys know, the fight over this isn't happening in this area. We are funding a fight in another community, okay?
Okay,
So we are fighting over this with LUBA. There are cases going in Lincoln County. We are assisting in funding that. We are not interveners. However, we may be involved in the appeal. And the reason we didn't fight it out down here is our city doesn't have a ton of money or a ton of time, okay, to goof around with this, all right? So we decided that the best course was to get some precedences set up north and then take those precedences down here. Thank you.
thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Oh, no, I shouldn't have even asked today. I've just been dying to know.
Question, it's a legitimate question.
Yeah, it's when they're attached that it makes it a little bit funny.
You're done.